need to be muted during this. Like I can talk during the countdown, but you have to unmute yourself to do that. So, hey everybody.
That was fun.
It's New Comic Book Day, and that means book club is on, and Alec is here.
That's not necessarily true for quite a while now.
It's the first of the month book club.
There you go. First of the month, New Comic Book Day.
Yeah, we're looking at all of June now. And I realized the boobs are right above us.
Appropriate.
I mean, man, no, if it was our show, it would be a schlong.
No, if it was the greatest comic book show ever, it would be a schlong.
There you go.
I think boobs are more on brand for book club.
Is it, you think? Okay.
I don't know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the book club. We are looking at the books, the noteworthy.
Now that everyone's gone after that intro.
Everybody's out. It's all good. The true comic fans hang and they stay and they hear what we have to say about a ton of Image books and a DC book for the most part.
Yeah. When was the last time we talked about a Marvel book?
It's been a while. Hot minute.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're ready for that.
I was going to say, for that rage to return.
I'm sure there's something grand on the horizon that we could dive into.
There always is.
A new number one of some type.
Yeah. I mean, we've missed a few.
Right?
Probably for
like a couple of Guardians of the Galaxy reboots.
Yeah, another Amazing Spider-Man reboot.
Right? That's fair. But we got some friends who still hung around with us. Kevin, tailgating. Good evening, Kevin. And you got this guy who I forgot to send the link to, but he was wise enough to tell me in the chat.
Yeah, so instead of like texting him like a normal person, I decided to call him out on the stream.
Yeah, that's a better way to do it. It worked. And I'm sorry. Oopsies.
Yeah.
I invaded because of Jen, her show where she was talking about Sandman, and now she's hanging out listening to us talk. So thank you, Jennifer.
Good thing JP's not on the show, or maybe he would send her the link for this one.
Right, exactly. Ben Compton is here. Good evening to you, Ben. And Gore Vidal was over there. Now he's over here. He says, FYI, Terry Moore's Parker Girls comes out next month.
Sure it does. I have both covers pre-ordered on my sub.
Is this a new series completely unrelated to anything he's done before?
It is a new series related directly to Strangers in Paradise.
Oh, okay.
So Darcy Parker, who is who Darcy Parker is.
The villainous, like, sister, right?
Yeah, kind of the head gigolo, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Not gigolo, pimp.
Yeah, she was more in charge, yeah.
She, like her she was part of what's known as the Parker Girls, who are the like prostitute / assassins.
I was gonna say they're like assassins, spies, right? So they collect information and
yeah, it is a story. It's going to be a series based on them. So
I'm getting like a Charlie's Angels.
Probably not going to be quite as fun.
No, not at all. All right, that comes out in August. Okay, gotcha. Yes. All right, something to look forward to. I'm not done reading.
September, we'll talk about it.
I'm not done reading the original 6 pocket editions. Is there more after those before the Parker Girls?
Yes.
Okay.
So he did another series called Strangers in Paradise 25.
Okay.
And then did 5 years, and then like a lot of his stuff started tying in after. So he did Echo after Strangers in Paradise, and then he did Motor Girl and Serial and Rachel Rising, and then kind of tied it all into.
So it was like a shared universe kind of thing.
Yeah.
The More universe.
The Moreverse.
The More.
Okay. But I don't know how much backstory you're going to need for the new series, because
I mean, I as far as spoiler for a comic that's really old, Darcy's dead. Like as where I'm at in the story, I don't know if she comes back to life later on.
No, I believe this is going to be a prequel type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, like I feel like I've got all the background I need for that comic based on the 2/3 or whatever I've read.
Darcy's rotten.
Yes.
And Kachu worked for her. That's probably all you're going to need to know.
And helped to kind of bust up the ring at one point.
Right.
What's up, Art Chemist? And Trailblazing, good to see you. So we're going to dive into the books from June. We got 5 different comics from the month of June to go through here. A bunch of number 1s, and some of them had issue number 2s that dropped recently, and I've got the issue number 2s for a few of them here. Is there a book you wanted to kick off with? Something that you were like,
channel.
Rip the Band-Aid off of right away?
Like, spoiler alert, like, I don't think anything we're talking about this episode I hated.
Me neither.
So I don't think there's anything that I'm going to be like, oh, I really don't want to talk about this.
And a couple of these, I already got the issue number 2. So clearly I'm invested enough to keep going with them.
Darcy is rottenly cute. I have a great Terry Moore did a sketch of her for me at a convention years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Did he color it, or was it just black and white?
No, it's just pencil.
Nice. Well, I'm going to go with the book that I think we were hinting at discussing last time a little bit. We didn't get around to. I'm going to go with the hot book of the moment, whatever. That's like spiking.
Hot spec book, because Amazon announced that it's going to be, well, not that it's going to be a series.
That they're hoping that it'll turn into a
obtained the rights.
So yeah, this is 8 Billion Genies. I also have issue number 2 that dropped last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So they had 2 issues in the month of June, and I obviously enjoyed issue 1 enough to get issue 2. I will say my big complaint with issue 1 was that I didn't get any of these characters. I just got the premise. Like, it was all plot. It was a bunch of plot. Issue 2 helps a little bit by giving us a backstory a little bit on these characters.
I guess the bartender a little bit in the first issue. You kind of like get a sense of him because he's mostly the focus.
I got way more sense of him in the second issue.
Oh, for sure.
Because it feels like they actually like explain why and how he is the way he is.
If they hadn't spent the first issue concentrated on plot, you would have been totally lost trying to like juggle these characters, which still I struggled with a bit, and on the thick plot on top of that.
So it's a big idea comic. The plot here is that every single human on Earth in a single instant gets their own genie with a single wish, and instantly chaos reigns, and it just gets absolutely out of control.
Like, occasionally they put this like ticker of how many genies there are and how many humans there are still alive, and like within 8 minutes, like hundreds of thousands of people are just dead. Yeah, because people wish for crazy stuff.
The main cast of characters we follow are all in a bar. This is 8 billion genies, JP, and the bartender or the owner of the bar makes the quick decision to use his wish to basically create a safety net over the bar. He basically asks that nothing bad can happen to the people in the bar. The bar can't be harmed by whatever wishes are cast outside of the bar, and that nobody's wish that is cast inside the bar will impact it.
Right.
So he makes like a void in the wish-making world, a safe haven. And we basically get to watch. I use the word basically way too many times. We get to watch the chaos going on outside and the characters inside trying to decide how to use their wishes, wasting their wishes, and what happens to them while they're inside of this bubble.
Yeah, well, especially because, after the bartender, like you said, immediately wishes for that wish, and kind of goes into it a little bit in issue 2 about why he was so prepared for that scenario. And he kind of like doesn't really answer, but he hints at the fact that like he is prepared for any contingency, basically, because he knows that he has
that survivalist,
right? Because he has like all stuff,
like a bunker and and food and
So he wishes for that almost immediately, and there's a band set to play in the bar that night, and one of the girls in the band, just after he wishes for that, wishes for one of the guys in the band to fall in love with her, but they're in the bar, so it doesn't work.
Yeah, and she wasted her wish.
Well, interestingly, or possibly interestingly, if they leave the bar, will he then be in love with her? Waiting to see that.
Yes, because he hasn't left the bar. The other member of the band hasn't left the bar.
Right.
Yeah.
But also interestingly, in the second issue, one of the guys wishes for the ability to get to another location safely. So he basically wishes for everything he needs to be able to arrive at this other location safely. And because he originally kind of, if I remember correctly, thinks about wishing to be teleported there, but then how would he get back?
Right.
So he's like, I want to be able to get there and back safely. And he turns into this like crazy, like robot-looking Ultraman guy with knives, metal armor, and
yeah.
But he is in the bar when that happens. So like wishes can be granted in the bar as long as they don't affect the bar or other people in the bar.
And that's my favorite thing about the genies in this is how like clearly mischievous and evil they are. Like they even jokingly say, yeah, we can kind of choose which wishes we want to make come true and which ones we don't. If they're fun, we do it.
Yeah.
It's basically their like chaotic mentality.
It's more so, I think, like they always grant them, but not necessarily, like it's not quite, because even like when the dad wishes for the kid's mom to come back to life, he's like, none of this monkey paw bullshit. Because he's like, I don't want a zombie mom showing up. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. But like he kind of sees that they would do something like that.
Oh, totally.
And I think they even say in the first issue, like, be careful how you word things or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing in the second issue where the president of the United States has one of his kind of chief advisors or whatever wish for the United States to be the preeminent power of the world forever after. And then he calls North Korea. North Korea is like, no, you got to bow down to us. Like, we win this, because the genies like decide.
Yeah.
They basically explain, like, if two people ask for opposing wishes, they kind of cancel each other out.
Yep. They grant them both, which means nobody wins.
Right. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see like where that goes on a bigger scale. I don't know how much they're going to get into that, or if it's just kind of like an extra little layer of fun that they're sprinkling on. Because clearly, like, it's about the bar and what's happening to the people in the bar. It's not about the world at large. We're just getting that sense because, like, how could you not explore that if when you're given this scenario?
And for me, like, that's what this book hinges on. Like, the artwork is, it's all right. Like, it's okay, serviceable. Yeah. But the story has to work, and most specifically, I think what's going to keep me wanting to read more of this is how well they continue to develop those characters. Right. Like issue 2 was exactly what I needed after issue 1. I felt like issue 1 was just all plot, and I just got a hint at these characters, and I thought, do I care about them? Do I want to read more? Issue 2 made me want to read issue 3.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at with this series. I enjoyed issue 1 enough to see what was going on in issue 2, and then issue 2 paid off. So that's where I was very happy with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I still probably would have stuck with it because it is a mini series. Just because, like, especially the genies are amusing enough on their own that like it's fun enough to read it, even if like the plot wasn't super compelling. But so far, it's yes, Trailblazing, Amazon did purchase the rights.
That's why everybody's hot specking on this book. That is a fun enough read, but I don't know that it's worth whatever $20-$30 people are going to be wanting.
And I don't know like how this is going to translate to a show, but I guess we'll wait to see how it pans out, because maybe it'll. I mean, that might make it to a movie for all I know. I don't know.
Right.
By the way, I know what the wish is.
What wish is?
What, like, the wish you should make?
Oh yeah. If you were gonna get this, what would your wish be?
So I don't think they really address it because they say a couple rules up front, and obviously in Aladdin, one of the famous rules is that you can't wish for more wishes.
Right.
But you can wish for infinite genies.
Do you think they would be excited about that?
Maybe.
Would they go for it? That's the question.
So then you have infinite wishes.
You do.
It's a little loophole.
The loophole, the genie loophole.
Yeah. the classic genie loophole that everyone knows about. I mean, now.
You just ruined it. So now you better find the lamp first. So yeah, overall, I would say I'd give this series about an 8. I'm excited. I was probably closer to a 7 on issue 1, but I think issue 2 boosted it up a little for me.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I enjoyed reading it. even without it being like perfect or without. I don't want to say like it wasn't without fault, certainly, but I'd say like issue 1 was probably an 8. Second issue was an 8.5, maybe. Like
That sounds fair.
It's fun. Like I would recommend checking it out.
Totally. Awesome. Okay. Do you have a pick you want to go to next?
Well, I know it wasn't on our list, but Trailblazing requested public domain. I don't know if we want to touch on that at all.
We can, yeah. I don't know where I put mine, but you have yours floating around. They're making edits to issue 3. Know that soul knows what your wish would be. Oh,
yeah, because I'm sure he watches this show. Public domain. Chip Zdarsky, superstar Batman writer.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
I got mine right here too.
So really quickly, basically, the story of this is that there's this guy whose father created this character who's now become this huge movie franchise, and he is the artist for the comic that it's based on, but the writer is getting most of the credit as far as like who created him. So it sounds like kind of a Stanley Jack Kirby situation.
Absolutely.
Where really the artist created the character, but the writer got the credit for it. So there are these 2 brothers, and one who the kind of focuses on is kind of trying to, get his father's recognition. His father gets invited to the premiere of the movie, and the star of the movie is a real jerkhole, no surprise, who the son is a reporter who has to then go interview the actor, and they kind of get into a confrontation about it. And it kind of ends with the father finding out that he owns the character. They find this like paperwork in this box that proves that he owns the character. So like theoretically, he's either going to be very wealthy or in control of how they do the projects moving forward. I don't know.
Or he's in for a long court battle.
Yeah, but it's not a superhero story. It's very much like a real world drama. So
absolutely,
it's definitely like intriguing. I don't really know where they're going with it though. That's the only thing. But I guess you don't want to necessarily know where everything is going, because then why read it?
For me, it definitely was, like you're saying, a touchstone for modern creative people and the issues involving ownership. The idea that these things can be continued to be, in pop culture and just for an infinitum, and yet the originators, the creators, can be left out of the money that's being created. So there's definitely a lot of like modern moral legal
right, and it goes
drama
back
here
before Stanley Jack Kirby with Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and
that's what made it. I was thinking about Bob Kane and Bill Finger the whole time.
Yeah,
but I know that there's a lot of shots clearly taken at Marvel here.
Right.
I think that it feels like it's, which shocks me because he's working there still. Kind of blew my mind. I was like, "You're biting the hand that's feeding you here, buddy."
Well, what? I mean, he's maybe taken a step away from that in order to feel like Zdarsky could have thought of this while writing crossover. It feels very meta.
Very meta, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an interesting read. So,
yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I don't know that I was like passionate about it, and I definitely want to read the second issue, just knowing how much I like Zdarsky in general, right. And I respect him enough to give him a few issues before I decide I'll read it in trade or whatever. But it's definitely on the middle range for me as far as like being super excited for more. But I love the history of it.
Yeah. To Trailblazing's point, he said it's the best book last month, in my humble opinion. Like, I can't fault you for that. I mean, it wasn't for me necessarily, but like, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong, because like, it was a solid book, and I can understand like why it would connect with some people a lot.
Well, and opinions are subjective, so
not on this show.
What? That's fair. yeah, I think overall I'd probably give it a 7.5 for me, as far as just like how passionate I was about it. I think I didn't log into these characters as much as I had hoped. Like I wasn't like as connected to them. So I was a little bit at odds with them. And for me, it was just more about the history of it and his what he was trying to say as a creator about these issues.
I mean this in the nicest way possible. It felt almost like Chip Zdarsky doing his best Jeff Lemire impression.
Okay.
Like
how so?
Because Jeff Lemire does all these like indie books about like family drama and stuff like that, and I just feel like it was kind of in that same vein, which I don't like. I haven't read everything Zdarsky's done, but I don't remember him doing anything this kind of
straightforward and dramatic. Yeah, I can see that.
But I mean, I love Lemire, so that was a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any Lemire hate going on here. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go with Jen's in the chat. Jen, I'll do the Powerbomb. Let's do a Powerbomb.
Do a Powerbomb.
So this is the new book from Daniel Warren Johnson, focused on the world of wrestling. Although at the end we do branch into the supernatural a little bit, as only Daniel Warren Johnson can do. I thought this book was excellent. This was definitely close to the top of my list for the month, and might be my favorite book for the month.
Super fun.
As always, his art style is not for everybody, but that's true of any artist. I really can dig it.
I mean, it's definitely stylized, but like it's pretty masterful for like how he does it.
Absolutely.
Like I think you could like fault his style if it's not for you, but I don't think you can fault like his execution or his storytelling.
So the focus is on a family in the wrestling world, a mother and her, is it son? I think it's her son.
Daughter.
Oh, is it a daughter? Okay, sorry. And mom passes away in the ring due to a tragic accident, and daughter wants to carry on in her footsteps and live up to those expectations, and tries to train, but of course is maybe not as physically adept as mom.
Well, also her dad is kind of like blocking her path because he has made her uncle, who is like a famous wrestling trainer, promise to never train her because he doesn't want the same thing to happen to the kid that happened to his wife.
And yet the uncle is still kind of training her at the gym and helping her out. But yes, there's definitely some people impeding her pursuit of this dream. And then at the end, she meets this guy with the
electricity powers,
electric mohawk, who guides her to this epic, I don't know, stairway to heaven, where this giant ring, or maybe it's hell. I mean, look at it. Right.
I mean, it's just a mystical world as far as we know right now. I mean, I assume he's a bad guy by how he looks and how the world looks, but.
So he apparently wants to pitch her on the idea of making her a world champ who can apparently bring back your mom. Spoiler, like that's the shocking twist of like now you really have a reason to get into the ring. And that's the end. That's the end of this this bit here.
Did you read the letter that he wrote at the end?
I did not. Oh. You want to tell us about it?
Basically, he's just talking about his inspiration for this, where it was more or less like he was taking care of his new kid who wasn't sleeping well, so he had to take shifts with him and his wife where they were kind of awake for 4 hours each at night, much like we do in D&D, to make sure the kid is doing okay. And so he watched a lot of late night TV shows, and he ended up watching a lot of New Japan Wrestling, which is funny that he said that because as soon as I opened up the book and started reading it, I was like, oh, this feels like New Japan. So clearly, like, the inspiration came through because, like, it is not inspired by WWE.
Okay. And I will say I know zero about wrestling. I've never watched, never gotten into it. So for me, I am like Jen mentions. I never thought I'd be reading and enjoying a book about wrestling.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely in that group there. Yeah, Winning Time is a great series on HBO from the writer of Philadelphia and Nina Hawes. Rodney Barnes is his name. Great series. Really enjoyed it. And I did not read Kill a Man by Steve Orlando. I did not read it. I don't know that one.
What's up, Carlito?
And hello, Carlito. Hello. Good to see you, sir.
But he also says that, like, he used to really love wrestling in like the late 90s, early 2000s, but has been out of touch with it and kind of got back into it with New Japan stuff, which is just like, if anyone has even a fleeting interest in wrestling, like, I urge you to check out New Japan Pro Wrestling, because it is like another world. They take it so seriously. The crowd is like so into it, but so respectful at the same time. It's really weird. It's a much different vibe. And they do things that probably they wouldn't ever try in like WWE, mostly for safety reasons. Because
I was wondering why.
They do some like stuff where I'm like, I don't see how that's just not killing somebody. But they're super, they take it super seriously, and they're very committed to their craft. But yeah, so it has a much different vibe. But then he also says, like, so I kind of got to like do the metal, like expose more people to the metal world with Murder Falcon, and now like I'm hopefully gonna do that with Do a Powerbomb in the world of wrestling, because like it's more than what you probably remember it or know it to be.
And I think hopefully, like, the way metal is the sort of background or almost like ambiance for Murder Falcon, I'm hoping that wrestling is the same sort of setting or ambiance for this.
Clearly,
like, the substance is so much bigger.
Clearly, like, the story is about the kid and following in the, like, trying to live up to the mother's dream, and there's a lot more going on. So yeah, it's framed in this world of wrestling, but it's not like about a wrestling tournament. It's about other things.
Well, in the same way that what's the Netflix show about female wrestling, Glow, right? Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. That's a phenomenal show, and I don't really like wrestling at all, but I really just like the characters, and I like the way they structure their story. So for me, I can love Glow and not care about the wrestling side of it. I just care about the drama. What's up, Bobby? Good to see you, sir.
Pro wrestling's not fake; it's scripted.
Yeah, I know. I get both sides of this argument. I understand. Those people are really banging and bruising themselves.
The athleticism and the things you have to do to your body are very, very real. But
what they mean is, like, when they do that punch where they stomp the ground and don't really actually hit the guy.
Sure. And like,
it's
the
disingenuous.
outcomes are usually predetermined. But yes,
those guys are really climbing those things, jumping off those things, landing on those things, and it's all incredibly well orchestrated, or they'll get seriously injured. Still real to me.
Still real to me, damn it.
So for me, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to get this in single issues, because I generally really love Daniel Warren Johnson in trades. That's how I've read almost everything he's ever done. And I've always been happy with it that way. And I don't know that I need to store all these issues in a box. I could happily read it when it's done as a hardcover, like they did for Murder Falcon or
at the same time, like, I really like to support creators by buying the floppies and the hardcovers. If it's something that, like, I truly enjoy, like Little Bird, obviously I own every variant and every printing and the hardcover. But that's because we're collectors and that's what we do. But I also respect the need for choosing what you have space for.
Right. Well, and then I also appreciate the idea that, like, there are so few people that do what he does, Daniel Warren Johnson, as far as writing and drawing their own original stories and doing stories like Beta Ray Bill or Wonder Woman Dead Earth. There's just not that many. And I understand wanting to make sure you put some money into that pocket.
Yeah.
So I get that.
And
so
like
I have not
also,
decided where I am yet with this.
you know, it's like I have become quite a fan of his, but like I don't think he's like a huge name yet. But at the same time, like who, besides WWE comics, who else is like making a book about wrestling? Like, and to Jen's point, your point, like who would just pick up a book about wrestling? So Image is like really kind of giving him carte blanche to do whatever he wants, which is awesome. And he's just like making good stuff, and clearly he's like passionate about the things that he's creating, which comes through on the page.
And I know with at least with the sales of the hardcovers, my LCS got a whole stack of those hardcovers because they wanted to get enough to get the little signature cards that came with them.
Mhm.
The Murder Falcon. I'm talking about Murder Falcon.
Yeah.
Sorry. And they sold all of them. So clearly the product is going, like
Yeah.
it's selling, and the buzz is talk is out there. I mean, I got coasters and movie and posters and
Yeah, there is a book called Ringside, and there was something else that came out recently that was either about wrestling or wrestling adjacent. I don't remember what it was, but so I mean, yeah, like obviously, like could say the same thing about Murder Falcon. Like it's a book about metal. Like what else is there about metal? But then there's heavy metal drummer, and you know, so there's always exceptions to the rule, but it's
absolutely
still like not like a big seller if you're like, you know, you're pitching the book about, or you know, a wrestling book. It kind of narrows your audience immediately.
There it is, Crimson Cage, AWA. So for me, of the books we're talking about tonight, it's probably my favorite. I'd probably give it a 9.5. I mean, it's really just a quality, entertaining.
I wouldn't quite go 9.5, but like 9.92 for sure. Like it's, if you haven't picked it up and can find a copy, I would recommend it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That leaves 2 left. I'm gonna save Sexy Red for last and go with The Closet.
Sure,
if you're down with that.
Yeah.
This is the new one from James Tynion. Tiny Onion. And I don't know if I can even explain this one. Do you want to give it a shot?
Sure. It is a family drama that also has a monster.
Yes.
So in that sense, like it feels very Babadook to me. If you see Babadook,
yeah.
Which I wonder if that's gonna be how it ends. But yeah, it's a story about this family. It's a parents and a married couple and their young son who's about 4, and they're getting ready to move from New York to Portland, Oregon, not Maine. And so they're dealing with like the stress of that. Meanwhile, the son is convinced that there is a monster living in his closet, which, as the viewer or the reader sees, there is literally one. And I don't know if that is the son's imagination yet, or if it is actually a creepy monster living in his closet. But you still see actually a monster. And then the dad kind of comforts the son by saying, like, don't worry, we're leaving tomorrow. The closet's going to be left behind, and like the monster won't follow you. Except that the monster like makes this magical door in the wall above his head and is following them across the country.
You did way better than I thought I would do it with that.
Thank you.
Most of the issues centers around the dad, who is a bit of a disaster.
A real piece of shit.
Yeah. Just really can't even like be willing to like put in any effort into anything.
Yeah. I know this will kind of break the rules of the show, but the second issue did come out today. Have you read it yet?
I did not. I didn't even grab it. I couldn't decide how I felt about this one.
Okay. Well, then I won't spoil anything.
No, feel free, because I think I'm in the place of feeling like I do with a lot of Tynan's stuff, where I'm just like, maybe I'll read a trade if somebody tells me it's amazing.
Yes,
It's
it is
Monsters
Monsters
Inc. the horror version.
Right. It from the kid's perspective, it's Monsters Inc. Except, like, so far, the monster doesn't really seem, at least in the first issue, doesn't seem to like really want anything from the kid. Kind of just like stares at him and then
But he doesn't seem to have eyes, just creepy mouth with sharp teeth. So certainly the monster could go either way, kind of like the Me You Love in the Dark. You know, that first issue
where you don't know if the ghost is good or bad, or
the malevolence of the creature is not really clear.
So yeah, the second issue, it starts with them. The son and the father are driving across country. The mother is meeting them there because she had to get there early for work. So he's driving the kid across, which I don't believe he's in a car seat and he's sitting in the front seat. So already, like, I don't know, that was probably intentional to show his irresponsibility. And they stop for the night at a friend of his house who lives somewhere along the way. Don't really know exactly. And this guy, like, welcomes them in and offers them some dinner and whatever. And he's got these big tub of Lego blocks. And he tells the kid, like, hey, build a spaceship or a castle or a castle made of spaceships, whatever you want. And the dad is like, oh, well, you just have these lying around? He's like, well, I wish I could say I borrowed them from my nephew, but no, they're mine. And they're like, I like to get high and watch cartoons and play with Lego. And he's like, oh, like, I miss being able to do stuff like that. Like, your wife lets you do that. And he's like, yeah, whatever. She just sits next to me and does her thing. Like, it's not a big deal. And then the kid goes to sleep for the night and says he's scared and says, like, to the dad, you promise you'd sleep with me every night. And he's like, yeah, I'm just going to catch up with, he calls him like Uncle Bobby or whatever his name is, even though he's just his friend. But I promise I'll be right in after. And the kid's like, okay. And he crashes out. So then the dad and this friend are sitting outside at a fire pit, kind of talking and drinking beers. And the friend kind of like just tears into him, telling him like what a bad job he's doing. And it turns out that the dad had cheated on the mom and the mom forgave him. And they decided to work on the marriage. And the friend is basically like, I think you wish that she had left you and taken the kid so you could have had a reason to like be free of all this. And
sounds accurate to the guy we've seen so far.
Right. But then the guy kind of bites back and says, like, no, you haven't seen us lately. Like, we're doing really well. We laugh. We have a good time. Like, I'm just stressed about the move. And while this is going on, the monster comes out of a door in the ceiling that appears in the kid's bedroom. And the kid tries to run out and like knock on the glass door to get their attention, but they don't notice him. And then the creature grabs him by the ankle and starts dragging him away.
So tries to take him.
Yeah.
And that's where it ends with
Yep.
We don't know if he succeeds or not.
And I heard somewhere this is only 3 issues, but that doesn't make sense to me.
Seems like there's a ton of story left here.
Right.
Wow.
So that might be incorrect, but either way, like, I think the art's pretty cool. I think the story is moving slowly, but like that's as I've said before, like that doesn't necessarily bother me.
And it's really light on like exposition. Like there's not a ton of it's a nice change of pace that way, but it's like a lot of what Tynan's been doing lately. His books seem to read really quickly.
Right. Even though like I think they're like more pages than a regular book, at least the second issue was. But yeah, I mean, it definitely like leaves you to fill in the blank and like fill in stuff in between the lines for sure.
JP says it'll be over quick. He just eats the kid next week.
Yeah, maybe. And then dad has to live with that for, not paying enough attention to his kid.
Apparently. Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't like blown away by this one. I did like the art style a lot, and the panel layouts were kind of fun. They're very, very straightforward, but they also like tell the story nicely one to the next. There's some real creepy stuff going on. Sometimes where they just include like a blank black panel, like it's just like you feel like the kid in the bed where you can't see everything well. He's looking with his eyes squinted. Like there's some great pacing to the piece. There's
Yeah,
some real
that's why I
creepy
decided to
stuff.
stick with it, just because like the story didn't necessarily hook me, but like the storytelling did.
Right. So I don't know Gavin Fullerton, the artist, but
No, but
that was the highlight of the issue, at least for me, was him.
Yeah. So JP said, so the monster is all the arguments kids been hearing between his parents. Right. Because I don't know if you missed it earlier or if you haven't seen the Babadook, but spoilers for the Babadook. The monster is not really a monster. It's representational of
The manifestation of.
Right. The manifestation of trauma.
And that feels like it could be something here, whether this creature is feeding off of that or whether it's
the kid's way to not cope, but like
right,
how he expresses his, that his young brain is dealing with this issue of seeing his parents like argue and get into these shouting matches and whatever, and he is then taking that and turning it into a physical manifestation of his sadness or his pain or his fear or whatever it is.
Yep. I mean,
or it's just a story about a monster.
That maybe it goes full of post-apocalyptic. He just gets the bat with the nails all through the top of it, and little Stranger Things ending for it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that I'm going to continue with it unless I hear that I might pick up a trade at some point if I hear that it just goes really, really well. But for right now, I think this felt like one and done for me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like for people who watch this show, first of all, thank you and why. But for those of you who watch like every month, you know that like I usually am pretty harsh on books, and that's because most books I think aren't up to snuff. Like I'm not just a cranky pants, but so like anything that I find recently or pretty much ever but especially recently, because I feel like the way the industry is going, with everything just trying to sell an option and trying to be like basically movie pitches, it's harder and harder to find like quality comic telling, storytelling. So anything, I don't know if like my bar has been changed, but anything like this where I'm like, yeah, that was enjoyable. Like, sure, maybe I have my criticisms of it, but I still enjoyed reading it. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, not just cranky
No,
pants.
sure. Okay, fair enough.
He used the word just. It was good.
But
well, that brings us to our last book. Sorry, my grade on that last one, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, maybe 7.5, just because of, like I said, I really liked the art. But
yeah. That brings us to our last book of the month that we're going to go over. We got Poison Ivy. We got a DC book, a DC #1.
Whoa.
I know. And I ended up buying issue #1 only because Jen said it was a really entertaining read. I had purchased online the David Nakayama variant for this just because I thought it was beautiful. But I was like, oh, maybe I'll read it if I hear good things. I heard good things, so I bought it, and I liked that enough because I got this amazing issue 2 variant as well.
Aggressively relaxing says cranky shorts. Yes, I live in Florida, so I don't often wear pants.
Yeah, pants is a bad call. As far as the plot, I will say I'm a little out of the loop on current Poison Ivy as far as like where she is overall.
Yeah,
as I understand it, in the way they layer the backstory here, her power had gone to an almost godlike level, and now is back to what we traditionally know of as Poison Ivy's abilities. She is also in this storyline seemingly dying, and she's decided to put into play this fungal virus that she wishes to utilize as a way of sort of equalizing the balance that is out of whack between in man and environment on Earth. And so she's sort of traveling across the Midwest of the United States. Well, no, she's closer to the West, I guess.
Yeah, it starts in Wyoming, I think, right?
And she's spreading this virus in an effort to basically wipe out mankind.
Yeah. Right. Wipe out mankind is definitely her goal. Like, it is unequivocally, like, I don't remember if it was in the first or second issue, but she states it directly. She's like, the only solution to the problem of this imbalance is to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And she says, you know, something along the lines of something that I say frequently, which concerns me because maybe I'm a supervillain, but she says, like, it's not that I don't like people. I don't like civilization. Like, and what I say is I like persons. I don't like people.
Yeah.
You know, like, I like John, but for the most part, I could do without people.
Yeah, right.
Because they're terrible.
She also does this. Sorry, go ahead.
And they do terrible things like, you know, destroy the land and you know, pollute the air. And so, yeah, like it is very strange because like what she's doing and how she's going about it is obviously, yeah, as a Trailblazing says, Blasian, I don't condone violence, and like her solution to the problem is very supervillain-esque and not the correct way to go about it. But her impetus for wanting to do it is very much sympathetic, which is, I don't want to see the world turn into a fireball.
And she's at the beginning of issue 2, she says something along the lines of, I only love two things. I love the earth, which you could argue, she says, is like lots of things, lots of living things. And I love you. And she's talking about Harley.
Yeah.
So she's like, one big thing and one little thing. And she's like, everything in between
is what I have the problem with.
I don't like anything else. That's the problem. Yeah. And I love that. I'd never seen her express it so cleanly. It's a wonderful way to describe her perspective. And then issue 2, she's continuing her road trip, and she bumps into a young poet thief on the run, and the two of them have to deal with some police officers, which, you know, Pamela takes out and continues on her way. Well, but you're also getting hints of the idea that this thing that she's spreading, she may not fully comprehend what it's going to do and the impact it'll have.
Right, because at the end of issue 1, she kills a couple of farmers who try to kill her for slaughtering their cows.
Right.
And at the end of the issue, one of them like kind of starts to come back to life almost.
Yeah.
And then in the second issue, she's driving this van, and she has 2 people in the back of the van who have been taken over by these poor things. And she kind of says to herself, like, was she sitting in that position before? Oh, maybe I'm just losing my mind. But like clearly they are moving. So these spores are not wiping out people and things the way she thinks they are. They're clearly turning them into something else.
Yeah.
And whether or not that is living mushroom men or zombie things, or who knows what they will find out, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think that's clearly going to be the crux of whether or not she ends up being a dyed-in-the-wool villain at the end of this, or the hero or the anti-hero who comes back to the light and kind of sees the error of her ways at the end.
Right. And a lot of it has to do with like her frustration at losing her power, even though like there's a scene, I think in issue 2, where she's talking to someone and they're like, you didn't lose your power, you were just returned to what you were before, because she was directly connected to the green, which is a Swamp thing, which is basically the Mother Earth, for lack of a better term. Like, it is the life force of the world and everything natural, basically. And so I'm pretty sure she was like fully in control of that and was able to harness its power to do whatever she wanted.
And without that, she is missing that.
Right. So, but to your point, also, she is dying. So she is trying to kind of enact this plan before she passes away, because she's like, well, it's kind of the last thing I can do to help this world that I love so much.
Totally.
So like in that sense, it's like kind of romantic and poetic, but again, wiping out civilization, probably not the answer.
I mean, poetry can be dark. And I do love the references of her saying, like, I got to stay a little bit ahead of the Batman. Like, there's a couple of times in each issue where she's basically saying, I think I've done this right. I'll be a few steps ahead of the Batman. By the time he catches up with me, it'll be too late.
Right. And when she's leaving this restaurant, like, she hears something behind her. She's like, Batman?
Yeah. which is kind of fun that he's like not in the story.
Right, but
I really hope they do the Greg Rucka,
just keep him out of it.
Just keep him out, or he shows up in the very, very end.
But
I don't need him.
His presence and his kind of the shadow that he casts and the fear that he instills in these criminals, like, clearly is still very visible.
Totally, and I like that touch.
I don't know if there's ever been a direct Aquaman Poison Ivy story. That could be interesting for sure.
Absolutely. And I don't know. I've heard two different perspectives on this is an ongoing or this is a mini series.
Does it not say on the cover?
It doesn't. Usually they will put one of 12 or whatever on the cover, and issue 1 doesn't have it, and issue 2 is a variant, so it doesn't have it.
I don't see how it could be an ongoing.
I didn't either, but
unless it feels like it's going to some sort of direct conclusion. Like, she's either going to succeed, which I can't imagine she's going to, because then DC Universe will just be gone.
Right.
But maybe it'll shift to another multiverse, because that's what they do. Because in Flashpoint Beyond, apparently they're just like totally disregarding everything Tom King did, from what I hear.
I mean, unsurprising, I suppose.
It's fine. It's like, that's what DC does. Like, I'm not upset that they're doing it to Tom King. Like, that's just what they do. But that also is why I gave up on reading continuity DC stuff for the most part, because it's like nothing matters. Like, I know nothing matters in Marvel either, but like really nothing matters in DC, because they just keep like hitting that reset switch.
So for me, this was a wonderful second issue, especially. Like, first issue I enjoyed and I thought was kind of clever. Second issue was spot on for me. Like, emotionally, the stuff with Harley at the beginning. I even liked the random little poet lady that they brought in. I was like, ooh, they do a good job with the diner scene between the two of them. And there's enough mystery set up as far as what's going on with this virus she's spreading. The artwork is just phenomenal. Really nice. Well done. So for me, this is definitely a book I'm going to keep getting, and I want to see where this goes. I would probably put this in the 8.5 range for me. Just a very good DC book.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to sound like a total snob, but like, oh, that makes sense. Like, it's really hard for me to give a continuity DC or Marvel book like higher than an 8.5, just because like there's so much more you can do with an indie title as far as storytelling and stuff. Like, you are constrained to a certain point. With
the editorial handcuffs are not as tight.
Right. So I don't want to say like you can't make a great DC or Marvel book, because there certainly are plenty throughout the years, but they're fewer and further between. So like, I think, to your point, like certain things like that, mention of the Batman and kind of that like sprinkle of him is fun, but all of this like backstory, unless you're reading all these titles, kind of takes away from it a little bit for me, because
whenever it's like, don't you remember in Fear State when Poison Ivy lost her powers?
I'd rather just like have this story, because this story like isn't necessarily a DC story, right? Like,
it doesn't feel like it's tied in at this
something
point.
Very similar as just an indie book.
But I do think we're going to get some cameos. I do expect a Swamp Thing or something at some point.
Is that going to make it better, or is that just going to be fan service? And
it depends on how they use it, because I felt like that's when Swamp Thing derailed for me, was when they started putting the Suicide Squad in there, and I was like, this book is gone off the rails. We're talking about Poison Ivy issues 1 and 2. Joel, it's good to see you, man. And I think there's definitely ways to bring those characters in where it feels necessary versus where it feels unnecessary or wasted.
Right, and obviously, like there are advantages to writing something like this as a universe book, because you have all of that heft of backstory that you can use to your advantage. I think that most writers don't. And I don't know if that's because they just want to tell their own stories, or if that's because they don't know the universes well enough. Because like, people like Hickman or Bendis, love them or hate them, they know their stuff, and they know their history of what they're writing, and sometimes to the benefit and sometimes to the detriment. Bendis will bring in these characters you've never heard of and try to make them like these huge characters because
important again.
Yeah.
Hi, Krista. Yeah, and so it depends on how the team decides to go with it, but I definitely predict that we will get some of those cameos, and I think that done right, it could fit into this story nicely. Like a Swamp Thing is the one I'm thinking of. I feel like this story doesn't necessarily need it, but at the same time, it would probably work well.
Yeah. Right. Swamp Thing, like as a protector of the green, like will he kind of pop up to try to stop her if he figures out what she's doing?
Yeah.
Or if he's going to be like, I don't care, like you're not hurting my deal.
Or is it harming in some way this
like she doesn't know what she's doing fully, as we've discussed.
Is it causing some kind of thing that's going to force him to take a part in it? I can see it going either way. So yeah, that one is definitely one I'm going to read more of. If it's only 6 issues, then definitely I'm all in on all 6 of that. If it's an ongoing, though, I'd be curious to see how they continue her story after this.
I don't think I'm going to call out DC. I don't think they have the guts to make it an ongoing.
I wish they would. This is the first time she's even had a solo series, so it only took a handful of years, decades, decades. So that was it. Those are our noteworthy books for June. Any others that you wanted to run through or mention?
What else? For the Seven Sons.
I forgot. Yeah,
I mean, we don't really have to talk about it, but
so Jay Lee had a new Image comic called Seven Sons. Do you want to tell them how you felt about it? I got the same cover.
Nobody has eyebrows in it.
No.
Which, like, I really like Jay Lee's work, but like, put some eyebrows on your people, dude. It's basically takes place in the past, but so it's clearly a different world because there are 7 possible sons of Jesus, more or less, and all 6 of them have died except for this one, who they think is going to like reveal himself to be the son of, or the basically the second coming of Christ, and how he's going to change the world and everything. But they set it up that there's like this homeless looking guy who turns out to possibly actually be this.
One.
It's an interesting world, and like some of the pages are really gorgeous the way he created.
Yeah.
But like I'm gonna keep reading it just because I like Jay Lee, and it's his first creator-owned book since like the beginning.
It's been a while
of Image, more or less. With Hellshock, I think was the last thing he did.
Okay.
And so I'm going to give it at least another issue because the world is interesting. It felt a little heavy-handed, but I don't know.
And Trailblazing says, loves his covers, didn't care for the art in the book. And I was somewhere in the middle. There's definitely, like Alec is saying, some spread pages or splash that are just like, wow, that's really amazing. But I also just felt like I had read some qualities of this book before, and I had read it better.
Sure.
Like I was more involved in it and more excited by the story. So I was quite bored through this issue.
Yeah,
and it could be just the issue 1 doldrums where you got to explain everything and get it all on the page.
A lot of setup to like
a ton.
This world is fairly complicated that he's created.
So there's a ton of exposition and a ton of story that has to be laid out. So it could be that, but it certainly did not give me enough hope to want to get a second issue. I jokingly told Alec that it's in the giveaway box now.
Yeah, already.
So that's why I couldn't find it right away. Anything else?
Yeah, I posted this on Instagram, but I'm going to show this off here. The Ben Caldwell sketchbook that I got. It's a thick boy. And if you don't follow Ben Caldwell on Instagram, he posts like these daily doodles all the time that he sells fairly cheaply for what they are. And I mean, just like open up to a random page. That's basically like,
wow,
what he does on a daily basis, and has available to purchase. And so he compiled all of the ones he did between 2018 and 2019. He has a few of these out, but this one just came out. So
that's the newest one, huh?
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Trailblazing, we had been discussing Bolero from the jump as a book that we were really enjoying. I don't know that we both loved the ending, felt like it didn't quite stick the landing, but overall as a story, it was very entertaining.
The first issue I loved, and
yes,
and I loved parts of the other issues and was disappointed by other parts, but overall solid read.
Yeah. I've been really into Righteous Thirst for Vengeance by Rick Remender.
Top notch. One of the best books out right now.
And if you have it, so that's one that like the last couple issues have been really graphic and really intense. It's funny because we jokingly said like, oh, there's some really slow stuff. And then all of a sudden when the action started hitting from this book, it's been relentless. But I've been really enjoying that. And it has not taken its foot off the pedal for me since the beginning.
It's funny you should say that, because that's basically like what I've been preaching for a long time with complaining about a lot of books where they just like pump so much into the first issue and it's like, this is too much, just slow it down a bit. And that's exactly what Rick Remender did with this book, where like the first issue, basically nothing happens. There's like a whole thing with him just like watching a bird die or whatever. I don't really remember at this point. But,
at the bus stop.
Yeah. But like it builds this momentum so that when you get to the point where the shit hits the fan, like there's more of an impact than just having that happen at the end of the first issue where you aren't invested in anything yet. So
that's the word I was going to use. Yeah, you're so invested in it. He finally shaved his beard. Ian, you got to fix your monitor, I think, for your TV. You got to work on that. But yeah, so it's been one of the books it's the one I'm done reading the quickest, but it's the one I also like remember and it sticks with me the longest.
The one you remember?
Oh, I will also say the issue where they did the torture was like, I was like, I almost didn't want to turn the pages. It was just it was so overwhelming, intense. But it was so good. Like, so this was, I think they had 2 issues in June, if I'm not mistaken. So the one at the beginning of June, and they just dropped one last week, I think. Great. Absolutely great. Oh yeah. Kate's reading Paper Girls right now. Actually, I gave her my trade. So she's giving her first try on Paper Girls.
But yeah, that Righteous Thirst and Catwoman Lonely City are the 2 things that are the current series, even though Lonely City, I don't know when that's coming out.
I was going to say, we're in the dregs on Lonely City because I think we're waiting for the last issue.
It's still a current book, I consider.
I mean, it has to be.
Not over yet. Right. Those are the 2 books that are like, I think are top of the heap right now.
That makes sense. I'm with you. So that's it, folks. We will be on Alec's channel at the start of August, looking at all the books from July. So I put the link to his channel down below. So you got to make sure you're subscribed over there so that when we're jumping over onto his channel, that you don't miss what we thought of the books from July. We do this at the start of each month, looking at the books that we read or were most worthy of discussion.
Good or bad?
Usually it's the latter, but this time it was the former. It was kind of
nice. Well, we've said this before. I think since we started this new format, we tend to be more positive because we have the chance to like pre-read the books before we decide, because when we were doing it weekly, we had to decide what book we were going to read before they came out. So if it was a dog pile, tough luck, you got to talk about it. But now if something like we were excited about turns out to be a dog pile, we can just say, we don't have to talk about that. Let's talk about this instead.
Let's skip that one.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. I appreciate y'all taking the time, and we will see you in about a month. All right.
Bye.
Don't turn your back on Alec.